They can have all the skill and ability in the world. If the attitude's tough, you can teach skill and you can teach nuances of business, but sometimes it's really hard to take a walker and make them a sprinter. Whatever your business is, if you're wanting it to go, make sure you're out there in front of the community and helping in whatever way, whether it's related to your business or not.
Again, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time. I appreciate your willingness to join us. I wanted to begin the conversation though just a couple of weeks back, which was at the Graveler, right? That's how you and I connected.
Yep.
A 6-day bike ride across your home state, racing in the morning, and then wrenching on bikes into the wee hours of the night. First of all, that was an amazing thing to see. But I'm just curious, what did you take away from that experience? What was it like to ride your bike across your home state?
It was very neat, very unique. I enjoyed the routes quite a bit. Of course, we had some weather challenges, nothing inclement other than heat. So it was pretty mild other than just that good old Arkansas summer heat. So that was, I think, tough on people, but that made a unique experience. That's for sure. I've had the opportunity to do some fairly long cross-state rides and a little bit smaller, but involving that Arkansas high country route. So I had the opportunity to ride some similar areas. And yeah, it was just, the Graveler was just a whole new experience of the way they brought that many people through, the experience the whole week. And so that's what my biggest takeaway was, how impactful that seemed to be to get folks from other communities we saw a lot of Iowa, Missouri. We saw, obviously, you were down from Alaska. We had a lot of folks other than just Arkansasiers. We had a lot of other folks from around coming to this experience. And I think that the whole kind of pay one thing, have all of that lined out for you, the supported experience, I think was a cool way to see the state. And, I hope they're able to continue that year over year. I think it was all in all a success.
Yeah. Now, you and your partner formed Phat Tire in Bentonville. I mean, that was the original shop was in Bentonville, correct?
That's correct. Yep. My good buddy, Tim Robinson, has worked corporately with Walmart before, during, and still. So we were 23 and graduated high school there in Bentonville High School together. And we're kind of getting our hands on shovels and in the dirt, with some of the first few miles of single track being developed in Bentonville. And so really we kind of came more business first and industry second, which is not as common in the bike business, as I've learned. But yeah, just getting our hands dirty, starting to build some community, be part of the community, and then realizing that there was a need there. And so I was maybe a little bit more in the cycling world, and I was excited to be the operator. So I went in and I was the main operator initially for about 5 years. And my business partner was always great support from a bookkeeping, payroll, kind of all the back of house functions that need to happen for any business, especially retail business. There's a lot to do there. And so he's been a tremendous support in balancing all those things with his corporate responsibilities as well.
When you were thinking about this, when you're looking at the community, your repair options maybe down in Fayetteville, but not in Bentonville, like what was the trigger that caused you to say now is the right time to start this business, right? A lot of the folks that are going to watch this are also entrepreneurs, business owners, and that when do you jump in question is one that I get asked a lot. What was the trigger for you?
Yeah, so I think that I don't know if this completely lines up with most people's experience, but for us, it was a little bit of the right timing, not just the cycling efforts starting in our community, but really also where we were at as young adults. I was 23 years old and sort of working some jobs that I wasn't real stoked on, just kind of fresh out of college, sort of getting my feet wet, so to speak, in the adult world. And as we were wanting to be a part of this, develop developing community through trails, learning about riding mountain bikes. And yeah, as you mentioned, having issues with our equipment and having to go to the closest bike shop 30 plus minutes away. They were busy, always had long lead times, things of that nature. We just spotted the need. I think the point in our lives really lent itself to that, and my willingness to just dive full in operationally, because that gave me a job or a potential income that I was directly affecting that really resonated with me. And so I'd say that was it. And then otherwise, like if I was to try to put myself in the next business operator's shoes, how that translates, I don't really know. I think you always want to assess, why is this business not in existence? Usually there are reasons that might bubble up that you realize are prohibitive for you to move forward with it, or they kind of firm up your belief that, you know what, these reasons, whether it's say in retail, for example, that they never gave it their all, or they were missing the mark, or they didn't know their customer quite right, or their location was wrong, or whatever the factors may be. I think a lot of times you ask yourself those questions. If you feel like you have a strong business model, you ask yourself those questions of why maybe can't this go? Or are there reasons that are prohibitive? And then when you kind of identify those and feel comfortable with overcoming those, or that those don't apply to you for whatever reason, I think that is when you kind of know, all right, I got the confidence to go ahead with this venture.
Yeah. I love that perspective, right? That idea that number one, why doesn't it exist already? If it's a good idea, why doesn't
exactly
it should be there already?
We had a bike shop in Bentonville that closed in 2006, and we opened in 2007. And I honestly had to do research on what the business was. It was actually a second location of a bike shop out of Fort Smith, Arkansas, which is an hour and a half south of Bentonville for those that don't know. And they had a decent name in it. Back then, cycling in Arkansas, and not to rub any of my old mountain bike heads the wrong way, but was generally more of a road cycling culture, and just kind of community biking and things like that just weren't really on the forefront. And so I think that for them, they closed that location. If I'm not mistaken, lease was up, and it just kind of was too much for second location kind of thing. And I think they were fine. They just decided, let's not keep doing this. And so when I learned that, it was like, okay, so someone has tried this, but maybe the community wasn't there yet, or wasn't really yearning for it yet. And so, that was one of those things that it's like, well, why did this exist? Well, here's one that was just there and then now doesn't. And so is that a reason to give pause? And it was a reason to give pause, but just to, like I said a minute ago, just to reflect and make sure that we felt comfortable with doing it either in a better location, which I would say played into it a little bit for us. And then also just a little bit more alignment with the community efforts. We were very community forward initially. And so we just felt like we could roll up our sleeves and get to work. And I think that's what did well for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Aided by the fact that you were young, i.e. willing to take a risk, and could slot yourself into a role that you would enjoy, right? That's
Exactly. Yeah. And the risk piece was always interesting and not always fun, but it was definitely a learning experience to take our business plan to the banks, and which ultimately kind of partnered with one specific bank, Arvest Bank, kind of our local big bank. They're regional to our area and beyond, but they were very helpful along the way with all of the tools and resources that you would want to develop a business plan and put it into action. We also have a small business college and kind of workshop out of the Sam Walton Business College at the University of Arkansas. So, and that's where I graduated from. And so there were some resources there that helped us as well. You learn about it, but then you go to put it to practice, and it's a whole nother level of learning and biting off that risk and asking for money and getting your first SBA loan to barely stock the floor the first year. It was an education in itself.
I think 30 bikes on the shop floor. Is that what I read?
Yeah. It was light, accessories light. It was, I had the good fortune of a couple great employees early on that bridged the gap in my cycling knowledge, which was very helpful. I felt like I was a decent leader and manager, but like I mentioned, I was sort of new to the sport. Mountain biked a fair bit in college on my first hardtail, and it was very much a weekend here, a weekend there. I wasn't living and breathing it like I would just a few short years later. So those early employees that had eventually moved on, but just some skilled mechanics and some skilled bicycle knowledge, I was able to translate that. And, I generally was more of the sales front of the store, although in the early days, everybody had to kind of do everything. It was a fun, interesting experience to get started there and try to, and the community really did come in and want to support us. And, you start selling a few things and your vendors want to expand your credit line, and which is great, but it's also a big added risk. And so thankfully we got a few more bikes on the floor as we were doing more business, and a little bit more parts and accessories and apparel and things of that nature just kind of blossomed. I would have loved to have had a little bit bigger jump on the get-go, but in hindsight, maybe it was the most appropriate transitioning or easing into the business. So
do you think your attitude towards risk and risk taking, or the way you think about making the next, making that change, making that jump, has that changed, or is that the same today as it was at that startup phase?
I would say it stayed the same or increased our risk tolerance, because a few years in, we expanded to a second store, and not long after that, a third, and then fairly rapid growth into the Tulsa market, some other fill-in stores in Northwest Arkansas. And that was around 2016. So we would have been about 9 years in when we really bulked up a heavier number of stores, starting to move into real estate, to, as we could, just all of a sudden, you have a little bit more borrowing power. And we've always just kind of believed in ourselves and honestly pressed that borrowing power as far as we could, because we felt like we were, again, rolling up our sleeves and going to do the work to make it go. These added aspects of business that definitely add way more to the bottom line for the long-term goal of, on real estate, insulating our store locations from landlord wanting to close on us or whatever. Those were the risks, the analysis of them, and why we were thinking that way was for our long-term health and benefit. But yes, it came with immense risk. I feel like, honestly, a lot of our movements have only become financially riskier than even just the first startup. I'd say, yeah, our belief in what we're doing has only increased, while to lack of a better term, our risk tolerance has grown with that to a company. We always feel good. You don't go haphazardly into an investment or a move. And then you got to set yourself up for an exit strategy where you have to. Like, we've closed one store and moved that to another location. We've just recently closed a store. We moved another location, and from downtown Tulsa to midtown Tulsa. We're looking at potential other markets to expand into. But I just say all that to exemplify that, you're not going to win them all. But if you set yourself up right, hopefully the losses won't hurt too bad. So, for example, shorter leases with options to renew. So you feel like you can reel back if things aren't going your way, or the community wasn't ready for a bike shop, or the trails, or all the initiatives that you're trying to do.
You were just saying, evaluating those moves, because the community, being nimble in your business, because things will change. Community might not be ready.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right. Being nimble is a good way to describe it. Even in situations where we've wanted to, we like the market from a business perspective, our bike shop business, but also maybe from a real estate perspective. But we haven't proven it yet. So we haven't operated in that market. So we've utilized, like I mentioned, just shorter leases with options to renew. Don't just go for that lowest price you can and sign up for 5 or 8 years or whatever. But also on the real estate side of things, we've done lease to purchases where, hey, after 2 years, we have a price set, and that is a good strategy that, okay, we know what we're going to be paying, or maybe there's a calculation on what we're going to be paying. So as we get closer, you're going to kind of realize what that number is going to be. And then you're able to reel back if it's not feasible or just tips that risk tolerance where it's like, ooh, yeah, maybe this is a little aggressive. That's sort of some of the being nimble we've talked about. I'd like to just talk specifically about one market. We really liked this small community that had a trade area of about 100,000 people. Now in the town, it wasn't that big, but they drew from a lot of these other kind of smaller bedroom communities of that, I guess. But we just couldn't really get the city and some of their big corporate players, the ones that you would expect to be assisting with community efforts monetarily, effort-wise with employees. And these were some of the oil companies there in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. And we were really hoping we could kind of shape that community around this great set of trails we wanted to develop around the lake. And it was a little stale. We couldn't quite get it going, and therefore it never really created meaningful business in our stores. And so we had to pull that one out. We moved it to Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. About 6 months later, after we closed, we kind of had the plan to move those resources and that store manager there, which was great that we retained him. That's just an example of, like, with more detail of how some of these things have happened for us and how they may happen for any other business in any other industry, especially like in a retail / hospitality type of experience like we provide. So yeah, that's just, that one stands out to me quite a bit.
A really good example. I'm curious, do you make, at the end of the day, are you making those hard decisions based on gut instinct, on data, on both, or something else?
Definitely both. A lot of data. But data would say on some of our Northwest Arkansas stores that they're in the past that the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. But we felt strongly about infill and kind of raising our flag in these other towns. So Bentonville, home of Walmart, Fayetteville, University, and one of the biggest cities in the state, and together basically bookend this metropolitan area. Well, since I was born in Little Rock and moved to Bella Vista when I was 11, and since I've moved there 1995 to about when we started 2007, the area had grown a lot. And then from then to now, the exponential growth is just insane. And so, exploded. So we see this, all these towns growing together. You don't hop on the highway and have 4 miles of farmland to the next town anymore. The regional greenway has come through, 40 plus mile paved cycling arterial route that connects everything. So we felt strongly about planting a flag in some of these smaller, well, at the time, smaller communities that are kind of, I should say, smaller cycling communities. Springdale is a big town, but they're a little downtown, and how they were part of the cycling, I guess, movement in Northwest Arkansas. Some of these moves were a little probably looked at as early, and then after a year or two, the data would have said, hey, I don't know about this. But then that's where some of the gut instinct comes in. Like, we want to stay here. We're wanting to really provide great hospitality wherever you're at. Maybe you can shop at 2 different stores, or maybe you're on the Greenway and you're happy to see the familiar flag to go in and get the hospitality you expect and the expertise you expect. And so we felt strongly about that and have felt that that will come around for those stores. And for the most part, it has. And then in other situations, referring back to, say, Bartlesville, it was, you kind of knew that the movement would produce the revenue, and then it's our job to make the bottom line work out. But when you're, some of the gut instinct there is when you're rolling up your sleeves and you're having these meetings with HR teams of these corporate companies and trying to figure out what their employee incentive programs are for them to give back time, and how, if their employees are doing XYZ, corporately they match funds for those efforts, or for like just trying to get the city and these corporate entities aligned to make these facilities come online that will bring some of that. When you're just trying to connect all those dots and you're not getting the traction, that in that example, that would have influenced the gut feeling. Business was what it was, but like, is it going anywhere? And so that's where business might have looked the same as one of our smaller stores in Northwest Arkansas before they started ticking up. You could just kind of feel the conversations you're in with community stakeholders is the best way to put it. This is going one way and this is not, and so that's kind of the gut side of it. But then otherwise, like, to answer it more for new store, new market development, which that was sort of like a spur off of the Tulsa market, which we were already in. It's about 60 miles north of Tulsa. So going to Tulsa initially, or going to Oklahoma City initially, the gut piece of it is, hey, there's big metropolitan area. There's this many bike shops. Well, I guess we're kind of crossing over into data as well here, but like you think it should go, and then you dive into the data and you say, okay, how many bike shops are there? What's the trade area look like? If you do all the research on the demographics and the ride facilities and where people live and where people spend money and all that, where would we maybe want to put a shop? Then can we put a shop there? There's 14 bike shops in Oklahoma City, probably more than that now. But when we were going in the metropolitan area that we were looking at, there was 14 bike shops. And it's like, okay, we want to maybe locate over here. How far away is the closest competitor or competitors? In these bigger markets, you also have a different tier of competition in bike shops, kind of like what I would call like maybe a tier down from bike brands and a hospitality perspective, because they're part of a bigger or a wider retail offering, such as a Shields or an REI or something like that. And so you have more of that in some of those markets. And so all of that is the kind of assessments that we go into to locate a store, to make the move or not make the move. And then it can also come all the way down to, you've done all this research and you just can't find the location that pencils out. We looked at some stuff in Oklahoma City, like, oh, we love it right here. Well, it was over $40 a foot. That might not sound like much to some people in some different markets, but for us, that was at the time, more than double what we were paying anywhere. And then where we did locate, our first store in Oklahoma City was more than we paid anywhere. So it wasn't that much, but it was still more than we'd ever paid. And so we had to kind of stomach that. And yeah, just that's how we did some of the, I guess, data versus gut.
Versus gut, yeah. But it's going back to what you said at the beginning, right? That idea that you started with a business model. Does this plan, does it work with a model? I love the idea of infill, right? Because then are we putting ourselves in the path of progress? Number two.
Right.
And then number three, are we feeling the love? Are we getting the community involvement? Is it growing?
Right.
I wanted to dig into that a little bit more, because in looking at understanding a little bit about the business, in reading what's out there and in reading what other people say about Phat Tire, it's very clear that community is a huge part of, like, almost like the DNA of the business, like just the way you think in relation to serving the community. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit more about what community means to you, and Like, where did that come from? Where did that community drive?
I think the community drive starts from as simple as just being a human and wanting that sense of community. And so if you have an open mind and you realize that, that's what, well, at least I think that's what most people want, is that sense of community and that sense of togetherness, whether it's cycling or art or culinary or opportunities for young people and young families, opportunity for recreation for kids or anyone in the community. I mean, you see it. Take golf, for example. People have been building golf communities for decades. You see like whole neighborhoods and thousands and thousands of people built around a fishing community, total recreation, not like up in Alaska where it's like a way of life, And so people, humans, we want that. We're community oriented animals. And I think that I've always wanted to be a champion of that feeling wherever I've been, whether it's in Northwest Arkansas or even here in little old Silverton, where I spend a fair amount of time now, getting people together. And if we don't have the money to fix the basketball hoop, well, 3 or 4 of us can just handle it, stuff like that. And so I guess that's just sort of in my DNA. And I think it's in everybody. I think it's just sometimes needs to be brought out. And when you get people who are new to a community, whether that's a physical place or a community of like-minded people around cycling or golf or any of these other examples, I think it really just brings people's vibe up, their self-esteem up. People just get more, they feel like they belong. And I think cycling is a great bridge to that. And so specifically to the cycling business, we've always knew that our business will follow community and our efforts in the community. We've never really looked for that like monetary return, like, oh, if we go put this effort in, we need to see this back. And that's really a hard way to ever go about it. And I think is almost disingenuous to the true spirit of community. So like, whatever your business is, if you're wanting it to go, like make sure you're out there in front of the community and helping in whatever way, whether it's related to your business or not. Because I mean, community is again around like the type of thing you're doing or the place you're at, I feel like. And sometimes that Venn diagram, they overlap for sure. The restaurateur needs to be supporting the local food bank or creating events. I think grassroots events are huge to really just place yourself in community, let people like understand that you really mean what you're trying to do. Just roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, I think has been the forefront of our business. And I like to think that people pick up on that and they feel good about that. I definitely think that specifically in Northwest Arkansas, we were community so hard for so many years. And it was a smaller, tighter situation, I'd say, for the first 7-8 years that we were in business and growing. And then as Northwest Arkansas has really blossomed, and as well as we have moved into different markets and things, I do think it's been a bit of an eye-opener for us to reset ourselves and remind these communities that we're in that we are there to serve the community and to support these efforts, whether it's our own unique events or picking and choosing the events that, because you can't do every little thing, but like where are the spots where we get the biggest win? And when I say win, I mean affect people's experience the most in a positive manner. So yeah, that's our take on community and how we've tried to keep ourselves in that light or in that perspective of people. But, it's not always easy as there's more and more noise or more competition or more growth and just delusion of, I guess, that sense of down home and all that, which just happens in a growing area.
Yeah. Yeah. But without the expectation of getting something out of it. It's not an extractive motivation. It's an additive. I mean, the motivation is to add something to either the thing that you're doing or where you live or both. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, and when a business, and I've seen this, because I've in these like civic meetings where there'll be other players of either in my industry or other industries, and they're real apprehensive to commit to something without understanding what that sort of return on investment is. And that's tough. It's really tough to have that mindset. You want to have a gut feeling about what that return on investment is and feel good about it and not make it so transactional based. I think that's a key piece to it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to change gears a little bit, but sort of pivot off of that. One of the things that I think that really sets Phat Tire apart as a business is that you have a staff that seems to share that approach, right? I mean, every person that I've worked with, and I have the great opportunity to visit Northwest Arkansas a lot. I don't have not yet figured out a way to live there more often, but Phat Tire always gets my money, and it's not because of the things that are in the store, but it's because of the people that are in the store. And I just wanted to go back to the conversation you and I had before about team building and staffing and the way you evaluate talent. Again, some of the folks that might be watching this might have their own talent issues or challenges. And I just wanted, if you would, share a little bit about how you look at, how you help, say, store managers evaluate the talent they've got on, that simple sort of whatever, runner, walker, sprinter kind of scale, and just share a little bit about having that system has done for your company.
Yeah, the system, as you say, has been in development and is not always been perfect. As we've grown, I feel like right now we have the best team on the field we've ever had. So I'm going to talk about it as like a now and then as we've grown. But like in the now, we have a great corporate team. We have so many different roles that crush it for us, from central buying to regional managers, like market managers, marketing and all that. But not the least of which is our human resource manager, who brings a lot of knowledge as far as what we're looking for in the right type of people. And so he's done a great job of that. And I think we've always wanted to act in that manner, but now we're a lot more, the stencil is built a little bit more on, are you ready to hustle? We're not playing bike shop here. I think a lot of bike shops, they kind of aspirationally play bike shop, but it's a hard business. And so especially in a place like Bentonville, which is our busiest store, I mean, it's a game on situation when you're working there, especially on a Saturday or something. And so you want that people are ready for that intensity. And that, another thing that we believe in strongly is some of our incentive-based pay structures that really, if you run the play, here is a direct path to X, Y, and Z bonus. A one pager, it's very clear, it's a little bit different for different positions. And then in some stores, like some smaller stores, you've got employees who can like double dip these incentives because it's a smaller store and they're sales and service, or they're service advisor and production mechanic. In some stores that gets broken out a little bit more, but some of our stores admittedly are running off of like 2.5 people full time, so you do the math to break down, that, one full timer, 2 part timers, and a little bit, however that shakes out. And so moving back to like, as we've come up and tried to identify the talent, and before we really got that stencil really well built, a lot of times, and I think some of our shortcomings on this have been, we need warm bodies in there to staff the place. And I'll admit that at times we've made maybe hiring decisions that weren't the best, or maybe we hung on to bad culture too long because we were scared of the not having the people there. And so what we've gotten better and better at, I think now the corporate team is really, so all of these corporate individuals can flex in and do almost anything in any of the shops. Whether it's, most of them are excellent, would be excellent hospitality and salespeople. And then quite a few of them are expert mechanics as well. So they aren't even really listed as a production mechanic for this store or that store. But oftentimes when you lose somebody and someone's got to step in, your regional manager is now running production mechanic in one of your busiest stores or something of that nature. And so having that corporate team has really helped us make some of those harder decisions quicker or be more selective on the front end. That's allowed us to, I think, reel back in our culture of hospitality and being top on knowledge and being top on ability. And then again, as well as hospitality. So I think that has really helped us kind of move in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. Hospitality and hustle, that kind of, yeah. But
that's the name of the game.
Yeah. And the conversation I think you and I were having was that idea that, some people are walkers, some people are runners, and some people are sprinters. And you gotta figure out who's who. And the more sprinters you have, the more you have that corporate culture that you're describing, the easier it gets.
Yeah. And we oftentimes we try to break it down into this 1, 2, 3, right? And then you do that also. And I don't know that we touched on this, but then there's the other 1, 2, 3 on experience. And so then you kind of got these cross reference here. And some of my most exciting, I guess, I look at the potential in people. Some of them are the 3 on the mentality and the effort, the sprinter, and then maybe the 1 on experience. And sometimes that's better than a 2 on effort and want to, and a 3 on experience, because, maybe these people are set in their ways, and can you really get them to give more? Whereas the fire in the belly kind of thing, the person who's a sprinter over here, but doesn't have the experience, sometimes that's just a personality trait and a willingness to learn and all that. And you can really shape an employee that way. And so if I could throw something out there that I would recommend to any business owner, is that you can teach skill and you can teach nuances of business, but sometimes it's really hard to take a walker and make them a sprinter. It's easier to teach the other way. And so don't sleep on inexperienced people who have a lot of gumption and a lot of desire to hustle.
Yeah, someone in the comments is going to correct me, I know, but I'm pretty sure that that's that describes the way Navy SEALs make decisions within a SEAL team. At the end of the day, they will prefer leadership and sort of those cultural traits, those attitudinal and cultural traits, over raw physical performance. So when Navy SEALs are getting graded on promotions or leadership opportunities, if someone's a 10 out of 10 physically, but a 4 out of 10, as a cultural fit, they will not be promoted. The person who's an 8 or a 9 or a 10 on that leadership and cultural fit, but a 4 or a 5 on performance, maybe a 6 or 7 on performance, right? You have to hit some standard, right? But they will make that even in the most physically, the most physically demanding, some of the most physically demanding roles in the U.S. military, they still promote and put forward leadership and cultural traits ahead of that. Yeah.
Culture. Yeah.
That raw physical piece.
Yep. Well, and the bicycle industry is definitely a place where you can, is it attractive that this person has 20 years experience and has worked for 25 different bike shops? Sometimes that might be a reason for pause. And are you getting into someone who is just too quick to be disgruntled or jump ship or whatever, and, the other thing is just being able to explain the motivating factors to people and keep them enthused. If that's just really hard to do, a tough decision needs to be made. So that's definitely where going to hire this expert mechanic. Our business kind of has to have expert mechanics, and we want to always be the top of the knowledge pyramid there. And that's just what independent bicycle dealers have to be in this changing world of bicycle retail. But yeah, like, is this person moving to Northwest Arkansas for the culture? Is that why they left their previous shop? Or are they looking to make the jump for an extra dollar an hour or something like that? And, that's one thing where it's been tough with all the new competition, especially in Northwest Arkansas, lose people for a perceived dollar an hour or something different. And a lot of times it's that really they either don't understand or don't want to make the extra income from running the play and going and doing the hard work that gets that incentive-based pay structure really kicking in. And again, I'd relate it back to our growth and our not always doing it right and now getting better at it. This corporate team and specifically human resource manager is really able to line that out and make it real concise for folks so they really understand what the take home could be at the end of the week or pay cycle, so on and so forth. And so, not to beat that dead horse too much, I think that just making sure people understand how they're going to make their money, your employees are, how's that going to happen specifically, and then be just that the expectations are this high level of hospitality and hustle. Once all that's clear and we're in agreement, generally speaking, we have a good working relationship going forward. And these are the people that stay tenured with us, grow with us for years.
Yeah, the more clear you can be about the opportunity and the expectation, the easier it is for someone to, number one, decide whether they want to fit into it. And number two, for other people then to advocate on behalf of it, right? This is what we do. This is who we are. This is what we're looking for. Oh, that sounds like you should go talk to them, right? That if that's unclear, it's a lot harder for people to find their place or for others to advocate.
Well, it's also a lot harder for a prospective employee to see the apples and oranges, like why it's not the same. Why
is it not the same? Yeah.
Yeah. We're not just going to pay you $25 an hour, but here's how you make more than that. And then what are these other things that we do from a cultural perspective that give back to the employees? And just to like pat ourselves on the back a little bit, we pay people to ride their bikes to work. It's a small incentive, but it's like $3 a day, And so if you ride your bike to work every day, there you go.
Yeah.
We contribute to one bike purchase a year for qualifying employees. And so how much we match depends on how long you've been tenured with us. And you have to have been with us, I want to say, for 1 year before this can start kicking in. But then after a certain threshold, we're getting you obviously an industry friendly deal from our vendors, which is usually even below our like general inventory costs, and we're matching it up to 50%. And so we have employees that really take advantage of this, and we're dropping $1,500 to $2,000 to match their spend on a really nice bike. And so things like that are some of the other ways, additional ways that we think that we're giving back and creating that culture within our organization.
Yeah. And matching in a lot of the businesses I coach, right? The question is not just pay more money. It's what is it that the people that you have in your business would value? They might value more money. They might value time off. They might value insurance. They might value whatever, paid vacations or learning opportunities or leadership. Like you find that right combination. It's not just, if it's only $1 an hour, if the conversations are only about the extra $1 an hour, I would suggest we haven't gotten to know our people well enough. But if you're populated with people that number one, buy into hustle and hospitality and are bike nerds, absolutely. I get discount on the latest gear. I'm all in, man. I'm Team Phat Tire. Yeah, sign me up.
Yeah, and if you're explaining all of this, and they're always going back to trying to make it an apples to apples on base pay, then I think you're realizing that this might not work. We might be at an impasse, and we might philosophically not be moving in the same direction and have the same goals.
Yeah, I love that. Gary Keller, the founder of Keller Williams, has the phrase, and it just puts it on a bumper sticker. He says, look, when I make hiring decisions, I have to figure out, number one, if they're the right fit for the job, and then number two, the right fit for me. It's just that combination of they might have the skill, they might be the right fit for the job, but if they're not the right fit for me, they're not the right not the right hire.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, they can have all the skill and ability in the world. If the attitude's tough, happiness and positive vibes versus just downtrodden and everything is complaining, both of those characteristics spread like wildfire, cancer, whatever, for better or for worse. And so sometimes it's like a person can, and generally you see this kind of behind the wall instead of in front of the wall. Usually salespeople that aren't happy aren't great salespeople anyways. In the bike shop world, I'm kind of relating this more to the service side of things, but the service work side of things behind the wall. But like you need that because it is a somewhat intense, environment at times. You're trying to keep up. You're trying to, we try to be 48-hour turnaround or better. Some stores are 24 hours. Some stores struggle to stay at 48, but we schedule our folks and hire and schedule our folks to make that goal. The negative energy person can really tarnish the rest of your staff. And then other people that you wouldn't expect to kind of have that feeling or that behavior start behaving that way. And so those are things we really feel like you gotta watch out for, and keep the culture, keep the vibe going the direction that we want.
Yeah, so good. Masterclass on running a business here, Chris. It's taking notes. Okay, so I'm curious what's next, right? So I'm just going to read a few things because I was writing down the areas in which Phat Tire now has operations, right? Okay, so it's a sales company, right? Sales and repair. It's also a bike rental company. It's a real estate play. It's in real estate and hospitality and Airbnb stuff. You sponsor teams, events, races. What's next for Phat Tire? What's on the horizon for this company?
Yeah, I guess technically there's two companies there, same business partner, everything on the real estate side of things. So we have a little bit of movement on the real estate stuff to be a little bit, I guess, less controlled by our business operations and more open to the development of other real estate initiatives that might fill like a bigger building, or maybe we would buy a bigger building or build a bigger building that would be more than just the bike shop. And so we have, you mentioned one example of that where we have 8 rental units above our Bella Vista store. Built that building. That was an intentional move to, I guess, diversify a little bit on the real estate side. We would like to do that in downtown Rogers as well with some land we have acquired over the years. We had a small building there where we were operating our bike shop. We actually moved it and are renting just a couple blocks away, while we hopefully can put the pieces together to develop that. So that may look somewhat similar to the Bella Vista, but we would have more ground floor space that we would hopefully share with, say, a restaurant or two. And then with a bigger vertical space, short-term rentals are going to fill that. Who knows how we get that done? A lot of financial questions on that, but like whether we would have more offices or long-term residential or even condo it and sell parts of it to help us develop the bigger thing and keep some pieces that we can afford. That's like one angle. And so those are two examples, but those are things that we're sort of open-minded to in general on the real estate side. And then on the bike shop side, I think it's just continuing to like turn the dials on the businesses that we have. We feel pretty good about all of our stores. And so I don't think there is much regression to happen there. Sometimes you have the hard decision to close something over here, which was harder earlier on. And as we have developed a stencil for that as well, you kind of have to make those hard decisions so they don't keep dinging you. But we feel pretty good about where we're at on all of our store locations, and short of some lease negotiations that'll come up periodically and have to get through to not have to move a store or something like that. But growth, I think, is the other kind of pillar of what Phat Tire is thinking. What growth is there for new stores? Just being ready if and when that opportunity presents itself. You kind of zoom out on Google Maps and look at like regionally what makes sense. I don't think we're trying to totally change regions and create a logistical problem for key operators or like create a whole new operating team in another area? What outside of our region or within that, what growth like regionally makes sense to where we're kind of already driving in that direction anyways, or we're not too far away and it sort of makes sense. And we don't have anything set, but the obvious things is I've always from Little Rock originally. I kind of claim more Northwest Arkansas because I was 11 when I moved up there, but my sisters went to high school down there, a lot of family friends down there, and I've always enjoyed that community. Kansas City's not far away. More infill in Tulsa or Oklahoma City. What other regionally significant plays would present themselves to us? I think we're always open-minded to it, but we're not hustling in any specific direction on that right now, but we have been very growth-minded. And so at this point, what I'd say is getting all of our stores that we have now refined and their operations really clicking and getting the most out of what they can do. We do have a little bit of just like in-store remodels, right? Like how do we get more bikes on the floor? I'd point to our rental business in Bentonville, which is standalone. All of our bike shops have their rental fleet within their four walls of their store, except Bentonville, for lack of a better term, Disneyland for bikes, mountain bike capital of the world, as we proclaimed. It occurred to us a number of years ago that we needed to move that out of that building. Just those two functions were very conflicting of each other: hospitality, sales, and rental. And so that lives in its own building about a block and a half away. So I think we're always trying to refine that experience, raise our capacity without diminishing our hospitality. There's hospitality there as well. There's how the check-in, check-out experience works, how the bikes physically, like literally work and aren't in bad shape, staffing up to be able to keep up with the turnover of those bikes. And it's not just wiping them down and sending them back out. It's having the periodic maintenance schedules. These high-end mountain bikes, as you know, we need to make sure that the suspension is serviced on the right amount of hours of usage. And so just getting more refined in that business. And so the experience is always as high as it can be is another big focus for us.
That's right. That's right.
That's right. Yeah. Just getting the most out of it as you can, but not putting the cart before the horse and not all of a sudden having bad feedback on the suspensions, rough and not acting appropriately. We want everything to feel fresh. Anymore, we have people coming to town to rent bikes, and it's just not just recreational rider. You have some like really avid people. I was at Kohler Mountain Bike Preserve not too long ago, and I saw these 3 Phat tire rental e-bikes, and I was like, oh, cool. Just kind of noticed it. And I happened to be up on the hub. There's this big metal apparatus where you drop into these different lines, and I watched these guys drop in. I mean, they're like tail whipping the bike over these huge gaps and everything. I'm like, oh my gosh, the game has changed. And these very avid, experienced, high flying free ride type of people, like they're going to notice when suspension is a little gummy and just not doing its thing. And you don't ever want to find that stuff out later. So you want to be real proactive. And that's what we've really worked hard to build into that part of business. And I think things like that translate to many other different types of businesses in different industries and all that. So
I love that attention to detail, because again, that's part of the hospitality piece, right? Are you delivering the experience, not that everybody would accept, but that every individual finds value in, right? And those high-end folks that are doing the tail whips off the hub, which is, if you've not been there, we'll put the links in the show notes, but you got to check out the hub at Kohler. Those folks will expect a different experience than the person that's looking for a cruiser to go tootle around Bentonville, in an afternoon. And being attentive to that that's really cool. That's a good business lesson and valuable to consider.
And of course, we want the experience and feedback to be the same across those two different users. But one piece of equipment just has a lot more going on with it than the other, and is a lot more, frankly, complicated to house the inventory, to keep it up appropriately. and to meet expectations. So it is what it is. And that's just, again, something that like two different customers, but you want the same experience regardless of how hard it is to meet those expectations.
Yeah. 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 Same planet, different worlds. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So if people want more of you, if they want more Phat Tire, if they've got questions, we'll put these links in the show notes, but where should they go for more Phat Tire in their lives? Where do they find you?
PhatTireBikeShop.com. That's our website. You can link to any of our social off of that. We have, we're active on Instagram. We're active on Facebook. We have 2 different Facebook pages, Phat Tire Bike Shop Arkansas, Phat Tire Bike Shop Oklahoma, one Instagram, but we're very active there. We kind of cross-reference all of our events, all of our in-store clinics, all of our sales, everything is cross-referenced across social media and our website. You can check out some of our riders on Strava. So Phat Tire the name means that they're a Phat Tire employee. So you can kind of learn a little bit, the growing social aspect of Strava. You can kind of see how we ride and what we're into. We've got high-flying mountain bikers. We've got crusty single speeders. We've got road racers. We've got some pretty impressive BMX and dirt jump, riders. So we're pretty widespread as far as our riding styles. So yeah, those are the main avenues to learn more about us.
Beautiful. PhatTireBikeShop.com. What are you riding next? What's the next one are you getting on your bike? You going for a ride today?
I'm going for a run today, but my next ride, I've been eyeing this in Silverton, Colorado. There's about a 9-mile county road ride up to Velocity Basin, about 1,300 feet up. And then a 2,000-foot hike-a-bike. It's pretty gnarly to a really wild descent back to town. It's called Boulder Gulch. So you can look that up on MTB Project or Trail Forks or whatever you use there. But it's pretty full on. There's a lot of hiking a bike out here. A lot of just big mountain experiences. My brother-in-law is coming out to do the Leadville 100, so he'll be out in a couple weeks, and so we'll be doing some basically on our mountain bike. It'll be a gravel ride because he doesn't want to go hitting a bunch of gnarly single track right before that, but he's getting acclimated and all that. Yeah. So we'll go over and we'll crew for him a little bit and cool. At Leadville, but he's going to spend a few days here with me. So we'll do some dirt roads that go into the high country around here are pretty extensive and just go and go and go. And the dirt road or the gravel bike for this area is definitely a full suspension mountain bike. And so we'll be getting out on some of that as well. And then I'll be back for most of the fall in Arkansas. And yeah, I base out of Fayetteville in the fall, and I just love the Fayetteville Traverse. I love all the new trails that have been put in there. Yep. Going up to Bentonville, of course, is just like can go and go and go and go. And despite the tornadoes, yep. we're getting a lot of those trails back opened. And then, Bella Vista, where my parents still live, and I frequent just these big loop systems that are 40 plus miles each. They have 2 of them now, so there's like 100 miles of plus these other little pocket parks amount to about a little over 100 miles of trail there. And so just continuing to, even as a local, it seems like there's always something new to ride and something to learn. And some of it's not my flavor from a hitting big stuff, but I like to go and roll over some of it, learn a little bit about it. I keep the rubber side down as much as I can. But yeah, those are my upcoming future ride plans.
Beautiful. I love it. Chris, thank you again for the time. I'm so grateful that you were willing to hop on a call with us. If you've got comments, throw them in the notes below. We'd love to hear what you take away from this conversation. I've got a page of just business building notes, hospitality stuff, team building things. And just for what it's worth, my takeaway is it boils back down to culture. Are you building a community, and are you building relationships that will make your business a success no matter where you are or what you do? Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
My pleasure. We'll talk soon.